The freeze is cracking. Not because 3% mortgages came back, but because Massachusetts decided to stop waiting. Here's the new landscape in hard numbers. In September 2022, 5 closed sales across the state rose, up 4.8% for single-family homes and up 6.4% for condos. The median single-family sale price that month was $654,500, an increase of 4.7% year-over-year. Condo medians reached $525,000, up 1%. 1 month later, in October 2025, closed single-family sales climbed again to 3,921, up 5.6% year-over-year, and the statewide median for those homes reached $660,000, up another 2.3%. Condos in October dipped 1.1% in closed sales, but still posted a median of $549,900, up 2.8%. Activity is back, and so is price firmness. The old stalemate, owners clutching sub-3% loans while would-be buyers waited for history to repeat, has given way to something more pragmatic. In Greater Boston and beyond, the question for 2026 isn't when ultra-low rates return. It's how to compete when inventory is tight, permits are shrinking, and life is moving on. The line in the sand is clear. If mortgage rates stabilize below 6%, experts expect a rush on both sides of the ledger, with more buyers and more sellers jumping together. But even without that threshold, Massachusetts is recalibrating to a new footing in which 6 to 7% has been the recent reality. What does that reality look like on the ground? Let's zoom in. The starter home has almost vanished from the metro map. In 2015, 57 municipalities in Greater Boston had a median single-family sale price below $500,000. By 2025, that list shrank to just 3: Brockton, Halifax, and Wareham. On the other end of the spectrum, median prices in Brookline, Wellesley, and Weston now top $20,000. The split is stark. Entry-level options have thinned, while the upper tier has pushed deeper into 7-figure territory. The pipeline tells you why. Greater Boston added more than 70,000 new housing units in the 5 years through 2025, completions that came from permits pulled years earlier. But as the dust settled on the pandemic cycle and borrowing costs rose, developers pulled back. As of July 2025, permits for future construction were down 44% compared to July 2021. A 44% drop is not a blip, it's a cliff. The projects that do deliver in 26 and 27 will be the last of the old pipeline, not the start of a new surge. This is the backbone of the new normal: more people willing to move and fewer homes in the queue. That scarcity isn't abstract. It shapes every bidding war, every listing strategy, every concession. Buyers used to wait for a perfect setup. Now they're getting creative. Cash offers have eased slightly from their 2024 highs, but down payments have been rising, helped in part by the bank of mom and dad. Family wealth is stepping into the breach, shifting the line between who can afford to compete and who can't. And financing strategies are evolving. The power bid, a fully underwritten pre-approval that can close in as little as 2 weeks, is one way financed buyers are trying to match cash on speed and certainty. In this market, time and certainty are currency. The statewide numbers underscore how that plays out. In September 2022-5, new single-family listings were up 7.5% year-over-year, and new condo listings rose 13.3% from September 2020-24. Yet inventory tells a different story. Single-family supply was down 4.2% year-over-year in September, while condo inventory rose 5.1%. Translation: Massachusetts is adding new options, but not enough to refill the shelves for houses. That raises the stakes on every well-priced property. Trade group leaders encouraged sellers in October 2027 to list, while conditions remained strong and buyers were eager to secure homes before the end of the year. That advice lined up with what we saw. Closed single-family sales at 3,921 in October and medians pushing to $660,000. If you want the full picture, step through a few front doors. In Lexington, the suburban market that blends top schools with easy access to Cambridge, a 6-bedroom, 6-bath property on Whipple Road hit the market at $4,190,000. The home spans more than 7,500 square feet on 0.7 acres in the Whipple Hill neighborhood. It's not just the scale. It's the future-leaning amenities, a self-cleaning, heated pool, a Google-enabled smart system controlling lighting, irrigation, garage doors, and window treatments, a 3-car garage and circular drive, floor-to-ceiling glass, a dramatic curved staircase, and a chef's kitchen with a waterfall edge island. The message is subtle but unmistakable. At the high end, Massachusetts is still a flight-to-safety market. When wealth parks money, it chooses assets like a $4.19 million fully automated home that can close with the speed of a power bid and then run itself. Now sweep across the state with fresh values. In the year ending November 2027 to 5, typical home values climbed across 50 Massachusetts cities and towns, each measured dollar by dollar. At the top end, Weston reached a typical value of $2,167,570, up $82,624 in 12 months, a 4% jump. Wellesley followed at $1,932,908, rising $67,667, a 3.6% gain. Dover hit $1,704,854, up $63,022, a 3.8% increase. The arc continues through Lincoln at $1,471,924, up $55,848, a 3.9% rise, and Newton at $1,461,113, up $55,861,000, a 3.7% climb. Lexington, the same market, with that $4.19 million listing, posted a typical value of $1,520,479, up $46,130 in 1 year, a 3.1% increase. West of Boston, Needham stood at $1,477,660, up $35,577, a 2.5% gain. North of the city, Manchester reached $1,271,577, climbing $53,310, or 4.4%, while Cohasset sat at $1,363,625, up $42,458, a 3.2% rise. On the South Shore, Norwell crossed into seven figures at $1,000 and $2,800, rising $56,407 for a 6% annual change, the kind of move that turns heads. In Scituate, values were $963,151, up $209,966, a 3.2% bump. Duxbury, another coastal heavyweight, posted $1,057,580, up $33,933, a 3.3% increase. Head north along the water and you'll see Marblehead at $997,637, up $22,648, a 2.3% gain, and Gloucester at $743,335, up $26,146, a 3.6% rise. Inland, Arlington's typical value reached $23,693, up $25,368, 2.5% higher, while Andover moved to $956,045, up $28,535, a 3.1% increase. Bedford crossed the seven-figure mark at $1,953, up $20,550, a 2.1% lift. Reading climbed to $878,046, up $20,519, a 2.4% rise. The pattern isn't confined to Boston's orbit. In the Worcester area, Berlin's typical value hit $647,851, up $20,797, a 3.3% annual gain. On the South Shore's inland edge, West Bridgewater stood at $577,325, up $21,615, a 3.9% rise, while Hanson reached 591,955, up 20,000, a 3.6% increase. On the North Shore, Merrimack posted $641,036, up $20,844, a 3.4% gain, and Rowley reached $776,628, up $21,226, a 2.8% move. Out west, the Berkshire towns remind you that price growth isn't only for the coast. Egremont landed at $74,164, up $40, $260 in a year, a 5.6% jump. Mount Washington reached $617,542, up $35,985, a 6.2% climb. Stockbridge hit $727, $467, up $22,579, a 3.2% gain. In Hampton County, Longmeadow posted $516,000, up $23,000, $62, a 4.7% rise. Travel to the Cape and Islands and the ceiling rises again. Provincetown's typical home value reached $11,909, up $22,762, a 2.3% increase, while Chilmark soared to $2,320,832, up $49,811, a 2.2% gain. Context matters. Nationally, the typical home value in November 2020 second stage was $360,782, up 0.2% year over year. Massachusetts buyers and sellers aren't playing the national game. They're in a state where a typical town can post $1 million plus value and still log a 3 to 6% annual gain. In some places, 5-year arcs tell an even bigger story. Weston's typical value rose by $804,519 over 5 years, a 59.0% jump. Wellesley climbed by $623,339 over 5 years, up 47.6%. Provincetown was up $354,630 over 5 years, 52.4%. The tide has been running in the same direction long enough to reshape what affordable means. Not every buyer is chasing 7-figure numbers. The map still offers pockets of relative value, and infrastructure is redrawing what's viable. The arrival of South Coast Rail has turned Fall River and New Bedford into commuter hubs with new relevance. Inside Boston, Dorchester pockets within a 15-minute walk of the Red Line, from Savin Hill to Neponset, offer beaches, parks, and groceries linked to quick commutes, a mix that props up long-term value. In Metro West, Sherborne's larger lots and privacy, or Medfield's walkable downtown, stretch dollars a bit further while staying within a 20 to 35-minute drive of Boston. Western Massachusetts keeps its steady hand. In 2025, the average home value in Springfield was just under $282,000, compared to a little more than $755,000 in Boston. That gap, roughly a $467,000 spread, signals a different kind of opportunity, a market with just about as much supply as they do people looking for it, moving at a calmer pace. But the supply story doesn't let up. The 5-year burst of more than 70,000 new homes in Greater Boston was the tail of a comet, not the beginning of one. With permits down $40.04 as of July 2022-5 from their July 2022-1 levels, developers telegraphed caution. High interest costs didn't just slow buyers. They paralyzed pro formas. Even in the tower segment, the math stopped penciling. 60-story glass, the signature of an earlier boom, is on pause because construction costs surged past what rents or prices can support. The top of the market adapts by pivoting to fewer, more bespoke projects, not by flooding the skyline. Policy is trying to pry open more space. The Affordable Homes Act, with its provisions to allow accessory dwelling units, ADUs, promises another valve for supply. An ADU is a self-contained living space on a single-family lot, the kind of quiet addition that can turn a garage or a backyard into a small apartment. That's the theory, anyway. A construction boom in ADUs hasn't materialized yet. Even so, the framework signals where relief could come from: incremental, dispersed, and less visible than the last cycle's towers. On the way down from the penthouse to the sidewalk, pricing discipline is the difference between stale and sold. In September 2005, sellers who priced correctly benefited from a market that rewarded Goldilocks strategy: not too high, not too low. With single-family inventory down 4.2% year-over-year, buyers had less to pick from. That translated into competitive clusters around well-priced homes, especially those within commuting belts or near transit. Condos told a nuanced story. With inventory up 5.1% year-over-year in September, buyers had slightly more choice, and closed condo sales in that month rose 6.4%. Then October brought a small dip in condo closings, down 1.1%, even as the median condo price rose to $549,000, $900. It's a portrait of a segment balancing broader affordability against micro-market desirability, building by building, block by block. The human edge of that balance shows up in financing. Consider the anatomy of a power bid. In a market where a cash buyer often angles for a discount, a fully underwritten pre-approval levels the field by offloading most of the lender's work to the front end. That lets a financed buyer close in as little as 2 weeks, comparable to a cash timeline, while preserving the option to lock in terms if rates drift toward that sub-6% threshold that could spark a fresh wave of listings. It's not just clever, it's survival. When a Dorchester 3-bed near the red line draws multiple offers within days, speed and certainty, not just price, can tip the deal. The other survival tool is family. With wealth gains in stocks and housing over the last cycle, more parents are funding down payments. That translates as larger equity cushions and stronger offers for first-time buyers lucky enough to have access to that bank. For those without it, proximity and timing become the levers. Drive 20 or 30 minutes further west into Sherborne or Medfield. Pivot to a condo in a neighborhood like Watertown, where the typical value stood at $812,810 in November 2025, up $22,611 in a year, a 2.9% gain, or widen the search to Worcester, where that Berlin value at $647,851 hints at a gentler rung on the ladder. Beneath those choices, the risk map is still shifting. The average Boston value, just over $755,000 in 2025, keeps the metro anchored in a high-price reality. Meanwhile, Springfield's just under $288,000 underscores how sharply the state splits between gateway cities and the capital region. On the coast, places like Hingham at $1,264,218, up $28,161 year-over-year, a 2.3% increase, and Scituate at $963,151 reflect the premium for waterfront proximity. Head to the islands and Chilmark at $2,320,832, with a 12-month rise of $49,811. Tells you the capstone is still intact. There's also a story in the middle. Many towns logged annual changes in the $20,000 to $40,000 range by November 2027. Arlington rose $25,368. Andover moved $28,350. Marblehead increased $22,648. Gloucester climbed $26,146. Westwood rose $30,760. Sherborne jumped $36,761. Norwell surged $56,407. Manchester added $53,310. Dover rose $63,022. Weston led the pack with $82,624. This isn't speculation. These are realized deltas, a year's worth of drift that either lifts or locks out, depending on which side of the closing table you occupy. For developers, the delta is a warning. The 5-year climb in values Weston up $804,519, a 59.0% jump. Wellesley up $623,339, 47.6% higher. Newton up $402,492, 30 to 8.0%, might suggest a runway. But costs and rates wrote a different script in 2025. A 44% drop in permits between July 2021 and July 2025 means fewer shovels now, fewer keys delivered later. Time lags are unforgiving. The effect won't fully hit until 26 and 27. When it does, the markets most dependent on new pipeline, downtown condo cores, fast-growing suburbs, will feel the squeeze first. For regulators, that lag is the window. The Affordable Homes Act's path for ADUs won't build a tower, but if each small addition translates into one extra rental or an in-law suite that enables a downsize, it can matter at scale. Success will be measured in permits filed, not press conferences. The bar is simple: enough incremental units to offset the 44% plunge elsewhere. If a town like Burlington or Needham approves a steady run of ADUs, it won't move a Wellesley median overnight, but it might mean one more teacher or nurse can live closer to work. For sellers, the lesson is discipline. September 2020 today was an object lesson in price it right, with closed sales up 4.8% for single-family homes and 6.4% for condos. October sharpened it further: 3,921 single-family closings and a $660,000 median statewide. With single-family inventory still down 4.2% year-over-year in September, and condo supply up 5.1%, where you sit on the ladder dictates your move. A Cambridge condo seller might need to calibrate to a more choice-filled segment. A suburban house seller can still expect a brisk pace if the asking price lands in that Goldilocks zone. For buyers, the lesson is triage. Decide what matters: transit, schools, yard, and move early. If a Watertown condo's $22,611 annual rise pushes it out of reach, look to Longmeadow, where values rose $23,060 to $516,166, or to Hanson at $591,955, up $20,317. If Arlington's $1,263 typical value, up $25,368 in a year, sits just beyond your ceiling, test an adjacent grid square. In West Bridgewater, at $577, $325, the $1,615 annual increase, hints at earlier stage growth, not end-stage froth. And if your path points coastal, Gloucester's $743,335, a $26,146 rise, can buy proximity to the ocean without the $2,800 Norwell price tag or the $1,264,218 Hingham premium. One more lens: 5-year arcs to November 2025. Duxbury's typical value increased by $385,808, a 57.4% jump. Situate rose $321,717, a 50.2% gain. Cohasset climbed $463,855, up 50 to 1.7%. Lincoln added $483,997, up 49.0%. Lexington rose $462,826, a 43.8% gain. Longmeadow climbed $154,237, up 42.6%. Egremont surged $306,639, a 64.2% rise. These are compounding stories. If you bought in 2020, you've ridden them. If you're buying in 26, you're stepping into their wake. Even at the top, where an infinity edge pool cleans itself and the thermostat listens to your phone, the narrative is about stability. Wealth seeks shelter in places like Boston and its inner ring, not for explosive growth, but for steady footing. That's why luxury buyers in 26 are still circling neighborhoods like Lexington's Whipple Hill or towns like Weston and Wellesley, where 7-figure medians did not keep values from rising by 4 to 6% in a single year ending November 2025. When a $2,167,000 typical value rises $82,624, it reinforces the thesis: security has a price, and Massachusetts real estate still commands it. But there is a way through. The story of 2025 was a transition. More new listings in September. up 7.5% for single-family, 13.3% for condos, more closings, and steady medians. The story of 2026 will be a thaw, life events breaking the golden handcuffs of sub-3% loans, families reallocating capital to help adult children overcome bigger down payments, and lenders refining tools to shrink the gap between cash and financed offers. If rates dip and hold below 6%, expect a rush. First from buyers trained by 2 years of restraint, then from sellers who finally see enough demand to justify leaving their old mortgages behind. If rates hover above 6, the thaw continues anyway, just slower, powered by marriages, births, job changes, and the recognition that you can only stall your life for so long. What's next depends on where you look by month. Through spring and summer of 26-6, watch the permit tape. If approvals stay 40+% below 2020-1 levels by July 2026, the supply cliff will harden into late-year tightness, especially in single-family segments where September 2025 inventory was already down 4.2%. At the same time, track the ADU curve. If towns streamline approvals under the Affordable Homes Act and dig into the details, lot coverage, parking, hookups, late year 2026 could see signs of incremental relief, first in suburbs with larger lots, then in closer-in neighborhoods where an ADU can mean a grandparent suite or a rental. Neither lever flips the script on its own. Together, they soften the edges. There are 2 watch items that matter most between now and year-end 2026. First, the rate threshold. If mortgage rates move below 6% and hold, expect a surge of pent-up listings to join the market in a tight window, amplifying the kind of activity we saw with 3,921 single-family closings in October 2025. That wave could drag medians higher in prized submarkets like Newton, Lexington, and Hingham, where typical values already sit between $963,000, $151, and $1,000, $520,000, $479, and posted annual increases of 3.2 to 3.7%. If rates stay above 6, the surge becomes a trickle, and pricing power shifts to those who price with precision. Second, the pipeline. If by November 2026 permits remain far below July 2021 benchmarks, new supply in 2027 will be thinner than hoped. Expect battered affordability in towns that posted the fastest one-year gains by November 2025. Places like Norwell up 6% to $1,200, and Manchester up 4.4% to $1,271,507, and steadier mid-market cadence in western towns like Longmeadow, up 4.7% to $516,166. If, however, ADU adoption takes root and a few mid-size projects break ground as financing costs normalize, the cliff becomes a slope. Here's the base case. Massachusetts enters $26.6 with a market that has accepted the end of sub-3% mortgages, is adapting with speed and structure, and is leaning into life events. Statewide medians stay firm. $660,000 in October 2025 for single-family homes and $549,900 for condos, nudging up as competition remains stiff in single-family segments and measured in the condo corridor. New listings continue to improve off $22.40 pound, as they did in September $20.05, but not enough to change the narrative. Price growth cools in a handful of overheated pockets, holds in most, and surprises to the upside in value markets linked to new transit or schools. On the ground, that means a few practical moves. If you're buying, plan to meet a seller's definition of easy. Be fully underwritten, commit to a 2-week close when you can, and know your ceiling before you see the house. If you're selling, build for the just right zone. September and October 2025 rewarded those who did. If you're building, watch your inputs and approvals. The difference between a July 2021 5 permit and a July 2021 6 holdup can be the difference between finishing in 2027 or sitting on the sidelines. Through it all, remember the distances. From Boston's $755,000 plus average home value in 2025 to Springfield's just under $288,000, from Weston's $2,167,570 typical value, up $82,624 in a year, to West Bridgewater's $577,325, up $21,615, Massachusetts is not one market. It's a mosaic of 50-plus micro-markets moving in the same direction at different speeds. The Great Thaw won't melt them all at once. It will crack along the edges first, near the Red Line in Dorchester, along new rails to Fall River and New Bedford, in towns like Sherborne where larger lots beckon, and in western pockets where calm still exists. Then it will work inward, deal by deal, until the new normal feels simply normal. If you want the clearest view of your next move in this market of steady medians and scarce permits, stay close, subscribe, and come back as we track every number that matters.